Hello everybody, I'm here from my office temporarily for two reasons. First, to let you know that this is your last chance to support SciShow during our yearly postcard fundraiser, and I want you to understand something about that. Second, I want to tell you about the illness that I have right now, why I have it, and why you maybe never will, because that's a science story, and it's fascinating. So to the first part, I need you to know that in order to fund SciShow, we need people to give us money, but we do not need our conversion rate to be particularly high. We are dedicated to making high-quality, reality-based, trustworthy science content at SciShow, which is more expensive than the average YouTube video, but we're also focused on doing that efficiently, which means that only a select group of you actually need to support us financially. This is the way we want it. We don't want to make everybody pay. We want it to be free for everyone. But this select group does pay so that everyone else can have it. And on the order of the whole channel, it's something like 1 in every 3,000 people who watch SciShow gives us money. So I want to be honest with you, this lets a lot of you off the hook. You don't all have to give us money, but there are some of you for whom $60 isn't that much money. $5 a month. 5 times 12 is 60. And so we have a $60 postcard that you can buy and that we will send to you. And there are also, and this is more rare, but it's real, there are some of you for whom $500 isn't that much money. And so we have this $500 spinner, which has etched on it the most important photograph in the history of science that you could buy. If you think this value is worth it, hundreds of videos per year, not just for you, but for everyone in the world, combined with the efforts of our team to get that content in front of people, to get them to click on it, to enrich their lives, to help them understand their world, to push back against content made by people who, one might say, have less allegiance to the truth. Now is your time. If you don't do it now, you won't do it. So do it now. And now, the second part of the video. I have shingles. This is a very weird disease. It's very unpleasant. I'm in pain. The goal for this video previously was that I was going to do some kind of stunt. I cannot do a stunt right now. I am moving the maximum amount I can currently move. And this is weird. I'm 45 years old, but I first got the virus that is causing my shingles when I was around 8, when I got chickenpox. And when I was a kid, everybody got chickenpox. Like literally, 99% of kids got chickenpox. And on the whole, chickenpox isn't that big of a deal. With millions of cases in the US every year, only a very small percentage of those kids were hospitalized, around 10,000, and only dozens of them died from the disease. Now that's dozens of kids who died. They didn't get to grow up and become 45-year-olds with shingles. But compared with a lot of infectious diseases like measles, for example, this was a much less dangerous disease. While immunity from chickenpox after the first infection is usually lifelong, the virus that causes chickenpox never leaves your body. It hides in your nerves, and later, given the right circumstances, can reemerge, infecting a branch of your nerves and then erupting out of the skin. Do you want to see what it looks like? Too bad. This later infection is more dangerous and more painful. If it happens on the face, which luckily did not happen to me, it can threaten your vision. It's also extremely painful, and it can sometimes lead to lifelong nerve pain, though that's unlikely in cases like mine, as I am fairly young. Fingers crossed. But the thing is, if you were born in the late 90s or later, you probably will not have to deal with this because you were probably vaccinated against chickenpox. One of the solaces I have been taking from my very painful ordeal is that humans looked at this and said, this does not have to be normal. They did something about it. And now, as a middle-aged man, I'm kind of a relic. I'm getting a disease that my child will almost certainly not get. But how come it showed up in time for him but not for me? There's reasons, and I want to tell you about them. In the 1970s, a scientist named Michiaki Takahashi isolated the virus from a child and then did what vaccine scientists often do with viruses like this. He weakened it by growing it over and over again under lab conditions in weird circumstances until it became much less dangerous. That weakened version, which is called the Oka strain, could still teach the immune system what the varicella virus looked like, but it was much less likely to cause the full-blown disease. And this is the core trick of what we call a live attenuated virus. You are showing the immune system the enemy, but a version that cannot do nearly as much harm, but it is still alive. Doing this with the chickenpox virus is a different challenge than with most viruses, though, because everyone knows that varicella doesn't just infect and leave. It stays forever. And a live attenuated virus would also stay forever. And we didn't know what that was going to mean for the long-term epidemiology of the infection. Would the attenuated virus reemerge as shingles? Would it change the course of the infection in some other way that we don't understand well? It's one thing to make a live attenuated virus vaccine against a virus that infects you, replicates, and leaves. It's another thing to make one against a virus that can disappear into the nervous system for life. Could the weakened virus also go latent? Could it reactivate? Would immunity last? Would it be safer than than the natural infection in the long run? Those are the kinds of questions you want scientists to be asking, and they were the questions that were being asked as I was being born. So once the vaccine existed, it still took time to understand what the full course of the vaccine's impacts would be. But given enough follow-up time, scientists found that the live attenuated varicella vaccine did not just prevent a lot of chickenpox, it also left kids with a much lower risk of shingles later on. The disease got better at basically every point we care about. Fewer infections, milder illness, and less reactivation down the road. There was no way to get that information except for watching a vaccinated group and an unvaccinated group grow up together. But that wasn't the end of the story. By 1988, when I got chickenpox, we probably knew enough that we should have started giving kids this vaccine, but we did not do it until like 10 years later. And the reason is that we had a new question, which is that should we be vaccinating against chickenpox at all? Because for a long time, the answer from society was like, I don't know, probably not. Chickenpox was very normal. Almost everyone got it. Most people were fine. Yes, millions of cases a year in the US meant tens of thousands of hospitalizations and around 100 deaths before the vaccine. But because each individual case was nearly always resolved without complications, it was treated as like just a routine little misery, like getting the pukes or scraping your knee or lice. And that meant that the vaccine didn't have like the same kind of urgency that the measles vaccine had had. Measles was terrifying in a way chickenpox never could imagine being. Measles is much more severe, much more likely to hospitalize, more likely to kill, more likely to have serious complications. So one reason it took so long is that scientists had to solve a hard problem. But another reason is that once they solved it, society had to decide whether the problem was worth solving. And this is a weird thing about vaccines and other public health interventions. They don't just prevent suffering, they change what kinds of suffering we consider acceptable. They take a thing that generations of people shrugged at and say, actually no. Children don't need to go through this, and 45-year-old SciShow hosts don't need to have this happening on their back. And that's what happened with chickenpox. We had the science, and then we had the caution, and all the science that came along with the caution, and then eventually we had the social realization that just because a misery is common doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything about it. And this might also explain something else, which is why people are often more afraid of the measles vaccine than the chickenpox vaccine, even though measles is by far the more dangerous disease. Now, part of this is historical bad luck and misinformation. The measles vaccine got caught up in one of the most damaging pieces of medical fraud in modern history, and the effects of that lie are very much still with us. But there's also like a human thing here. People are not great at risk assessment, and measles is just much more forgotten than chickenpox is. And look, I don't have good data to back this up, so this is not something that we would say in a typical SciShow video, but this is not a typical SciShow video. But I think people remember chickenpox, and I think they don't remember measles. Even though chickenpox is a much less dangerous disease, chickenpox feels like more immediate and real, while measles feels almost old-timey. Parents born before the mid-90s almost certainly remember the unpleasantness of chickenpox, and they might also have recently experienced the pain of shingles. My wife got shingles while she was pregnant, but they almost certainly do not remember what it was like to get measles. And this is one of the great tragedies of successful public health. When you do your job well enough, the intervention becomes much more visible than the disaster it prevents. And this is one reason why good information is extremely valuable. We are bad at risk assessment, but science is good at risk assessment. And this is why science and common sense often do not align. And that misalignment can be exploited either by hucksters or by true believers who imagine themselves to be heroes. But there are ways to get common sense and science to align more tightly. And we do that with good information explained well. And that's what we do here at SciShow. And we're going to keep doing it. With your help, even as I wince through a virus that has been waiting in my nerves since the Reagan administration. A virus I could have avoided, but science took its time to make sure the vaccine worked well and was safe. And now I know my son will probably never have to deal with this pain. So help us out. This video will be deleted 24 hours after upload. If you don't buy a postcard now or get a spinner now, you will not get one. So if you're gonna do it now.